YouTube Ozik going the GOAT House is back with my top 100 players of the 2019 through 2020 season. Do this video every single year. Ranking 100 players is tough, especially because I think there's plenty more, a lot more than 100 good players. So it is tough, really tough, leaving some good players out. It's also tough kind of trying to match up different players by position, deciding who's better. So I went through, we're going to go through 100 to 1. I know I'm going to get ripped in the comments for leaving the guy out. I apologize. It's really tough. 100 seems like a big number, but when ranking these guys, it really feels like a small number to me because it's just tough to squeeze just only 100 good players in here. But like I said, this is based off the 2019 through 2020 season. So that means playoffs and Super Bowl kind of matter. Mainly the regular season matters, but the goal is to make the playoffs first and the goal is to win the Super Bowl. So to me, that should matter because the best players are going to show up, at the end of the season when it matters most. So that's why it played a part. So some of those players that played very well in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl, I guess got some bonus points we can say here. Before we get started, we have two channels now. We have this channel and we have our new channel, the GOAT House Plus. There's a link down in the description in the comments for that, as well as our Twitter. Please subscribe to both channels. Full NFL content all year long, predictions in season, and then in the off season we got full free agency coverage, which we already got started on, and NFL draft coverage, which we already got started on some mock drafts. So every single day we got you covered, and we're always talking and answering questions on the Twitter there. So go ahead and click the link and follow us on Twitter. And then there's our Patreon link. You'll see that down below as well. To the top 100. One other thing, I'm not a big stats guy. A lot of people should know that by now. To me, it's what I see on the field. And to me, stats are it's good to kind of, prove that what you see on the field kind of it matches up. It's a good indicator that you're kind of what you're seeing on the field. So I'm not going to sit here and break down a bunch of stats, but everyone should expect that. Starting at the bottom, at number 100, just making the list is Mark Andrews. A really good year, a really good key to the Ravens offense this year. It's, again, 100 players. It's tough because he had such a great year having him at number 100. Off the top of my head, before actually making the list, coming up with the players and ranking them, I would have figured Mark Andrews probably be higher on my own list, but ends up coming in at 100. 99, Jordan Poyer. I think the Bills' better safety there. A dominant year. To me, a sure tackler. He's not going to lay anybody out, but he's going to come up, make sure he wraps up the ankles, bring a guy down all the time. I think this guy's been a sleeper his whole career, coming out of Oregon State, kind of viewed as a kind of an undersized guy, a guy that maybe get run over, people thought. But he's always been a playmaker. He's been a sure tackler. He was a big piece of that Bills' solid defense there. Tyler Lockett at 98. I thought the first half of the season was a little better, but obviously was very dominant. Some ridiculous toe taps, some ridiculous red zone catches, going against the best corners and, getting them lost, all over the field, mainly in the red zone. He does a good job of, because the defense, has their, the back is not open unlike the rest of the field. And Tyler Lockett does a good job of taking that away from him. Ertz at 97. Second half of the year, he started to pick it up a little more. First half of the year, he had some, it drops that we're not really expecting. So the first half of the year, I wasn't super high on Ertz. I was a little disappointed. Second half of the year was great. We've seen him clutch up in that must-win Giants game, for one example, but was dominant for them like he always is. Joe Schobert, the Browns linebacker, who's going to be a free agent, had a very productive year, was kind of all over the place. One of those guys that, going to fill out the stats, but a very impressive year. Stopping the run and in coverage. Josh Jacobs at 95. He squeezes in here. The Raiders running back. Tough that he missed some games down the stretch being hurt. But the main reason he's here is because the impact he made. The Raiders did, beef up the offensive line, but they also got a guy, Josh Jacobs, here on the offense, and it really opened up the running game, which then opened up the passing game. So both were really better than, last year. And I think a big part, maybe the main part, was Josh Jacobs. So he makes the list there. Joe Thuney, the Patriots guard, I think one of the better guards in football, as expected. A down year for the Patriots O-line, but not for Thuney. 93, Jordan Phillips of the Bills. Very productive year. He filled out, the box score, the stats, look really good, got after the quarterback. I know PFF guys are kind of knocking Phillips because, they're saying the stats are pretty misleading. I do think stats can be pretty misleading at times. Maybe he didn't have enough pressures that what you're looking for. But at the same time, he didn't play as many snaps as, your usual starting D tackle, and he still was very productive. So I think that's maybe why he didn't get a whole bunch of pressures off. He got to the quarterback. I thought he did a great job. So he makes the list. Marcus Williams had a very good year. One of my sleepers from the draft a couple years ago, and right away coming in to New Orleans there, he got early playing time, and I was excited about that because I knew he can do that. He did struggle, quite a bit early, and a very good, breakout year, I guess, in his young career. So really impressed with that. Fletcher Cox, who to me is one of the most dominant interior defense linemen in football. I'd say in general going into a new year, he's top 3 interior defense lineman. This year, I guess somewhat of an off year, but still dominant. You still felt his presence. It felt like the rest of the team, maybe because of injuries, weren't at their best, so maybe that knocks him down a little bit. So not his best year, but still a down year is still a great year for a dominant player like Fletcher Cox. We're moving on. Number 9, another Raiders player, Darren Waller. It's a guy I actually moved up. After coming up with the players that I think should be on my top 100, I eventually get it down to actually 100. It's a guy that I thought would be a little lower in this, barely making it in, but really seeing what he did, a lack of a receiving game, for the actual receivers, it was tough for the Raiders to get anything going that way. So Waller pretty much had to be that guy as the tight end, and he really picked up some slack for that team. So I thought at times he carried them really in really the receiving game, we'll call it. A.J. Brown, 89, who I thought should have been the rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year for the Titans. Started off a little slow. They make the quarterback change. He's a big-time playmaker, he's an impact player. He had a phenomenal year. A big reason the Titans started to pick it up. Amari Cooper at 88, liked him a lot more in the first half of the season. Second half of the season, coming out with nagging injuries. I don't like that, but he had some drops here and there, but he had some ridiculously big games that helped. We see the passing game getting going more and more since they traded for Cooper, and there's a reason for that. So I think the first half of the year is kind of what keeps him in here, was dominant there. Tremaine Edmonds of the Bills, a guy, opposite of we talked about Jordan Phillips. Edmonds isn't going to light up that. If you go look at his stats, maybe they're not going to make you jump out of your seat or anything, but this is a dominant player that does a lot for the Bills. Most of the time they're playing 2 linebackers in there, and Edmonds very rangy, sideline to sideline, also in the backfield, also dropping back. He does so much for this team and was very dominant in only his second year. David Bakhtiari, the Packers tackle, I think one of the better tackles in football. And what I like about him is consistent. You know what you're going to get from him. It's pretty much the same play. Every single year. Maybe he didn't have the best play against teams like the Niners, but another very good season there. One of the better tackles in football. Another Titans player, Kevin Byard. I think one of the better safeties in football. Playmaker safety back there. So he's definitely deserving to be on the list. Keenan Allen, talk about consistency again. Keenan Allen is like the definition of consistency for a receiver. You know what you're going to get from him every year. It's going to be a big year. Phillip Rivers, off his game, way off his game compared to last year. We were talking about Phillip Rivers being an MVP candidate at one point last year, maybe halfway through the season. And now you got this year and how he played. But Keenan Allen is still able to make the big plays, have the big games. And we see 2 Chargers in a row. I think one of the more underrated players from this year, Austin Eckler. I thought Austin Eckler was the best playmaker on the offense for the Chargers. If they used him the amount that they should have used him, we could be talking about well inside the top 50, maybe inside the top 20 for Austin Eckler. A dominant pass catcher, a very good runner. I thought he had a hell of a year. Jamie Collins, highly productive, but again, it's not about the production for me, but there's more to it. Collins brought the presence, as a linebacker, but that also used as a pass rusher, which the Patriots were kind of lacking in that pass rush. They got to get that from their actual stand-up linebackers, and Collins was able to bring that to the Patriots and be a big impact for that top-tier defense. And then Matthew Judon at 81. Lack of help there. Not the best linebacker unit, which their linebacker unit consists of 4 players because they run a 3-4. So 2 of them are pass rushers, one of them being Matthew Judon, but not the best unit. So he kind of had to carry that load, which was one of the better defenses in football again because of his production. He maybe didn't have the production of some of the top tier pass rushers, but he was asked to do a lot. I think he carried the load for some of those guys. Moving on, number 80, Corey Littleton, a very good inside linebacker. Last year, he kind of came out of nowhere, kind of a special teams guy. And we're saying, okay, this guy's a pretty damn solid special teamer. He's playing linebacker. He's looking very good for them, and now, he kind of came out of nowhere. Now this year, he took it up a notch too. Now he's a free agent, so we'll see if they can get him back. But, good stop and run, good in coverage. Corey Littleton had a pretty big year. Brandon Brooks for the Eagles, another consistent guard, out there that's really not going to let much past him. Very good in the run blocking game there. So he comes in at 79, that is. And then we got the 2 rookie Devons at 77, 78. That's how close I feel between these 2 guys. Earlier in the year, I think Devin Bush for the Steelers kind of had the edge on Devin White. But the second half of the year, Devin Bush kept playing pretty consistent, kept playing his game. But Devin White just took it up an insane notch the second half of the year, covering and in the run game, getting in the backfield, kind of what we expected from him out of LSU. So really close between the two. Maybe White really had me jumping out of my seat in the second half of the year. So maybe that sets the edge, but also, look at the Bucs defense, look at the Steelers defense, what's around Devin Bush. Devin White had to pick up some slack, but, there is some better players, for the Buccaneers. But what impressed me was covering downfield. He's almost better covering downfield than, their secondary guys. That's kind of what stood out. Ryan Tannehill at 76. Yeah, we've seen him miss some games early in the year. It was a backup, so I guess that kind of hurts him in this category. But insanely good in the regular season. Wish we saw more in the playoffs. They didn't really need him at time in the playoffs. But a very accurate quarterback, took the Titans to the next level. See, 2 Titans in a row. Logan Ryan, I thought, was the best slot corner in football. Was asked to do a lot, was a big part of the game plan for Lamar Jackson to contain him, set the edge there. Definitely the best slot corner in football, in my opinion. 74, Harrison Smith, the Viking safety, who I think, in general, starting a new year, I'd still probably consider the best safety in football just because how much he does. And I'm a big fan of instincts. You can't coach instincts. I think you're born with it. At some point you learn it somehow. It gets into your head. But, instincts, it's hard to come across, and that's what Harrison Smith has. Maybe the most important piece of that Vikings team. I'd say somewhat of a down year for him compared to most, and that, he's still number 74. And 73, Preston Smith, highly productive of the Packers. Getting after the quarterback. And the thing about Preston Smith was he was like mainly a stop the run first pass rusher, which is odd, which is kind of odd, but he was very good. If a run came his way, he was going to make the tackle. He going across the field making the tackles on the other side. So that was kind of the thing with him. And then, the pass rush was kind of extra when he can get it, if he can stay consistent. That was kind of the problem. And now with the Packers, he was able to, be a pass rusher first. And I think, help from other guys that we'll talk about kind of definitely helped that. But so that's why maybe the production may want you to put him a little higher. But again, very, very good year. He's going in the right direction. What I'm getting to. Kenny Golladay, I think, could have been well inside the top 50 if Stafford never got hurt. This guy was dominant. He was a touchdown machine. He's pretty much got everything you want in a receiver. And I think another one of my draft hits, coming out of NIU, as soon as I watched tape on this guy, I was in love with the idea of Kenny Golladay here because, he brings everything to the table. Like, he's not just that lengthy guy that's going to be a red zone touchdown guy, even though that's made what the stats show. But, he can catch the ball anywhere on the field. He can run. It's a shame that his quarterback got hurt because he was looking really good. A rookie here, Max Crosby at 71. A guy that I'm liking more and more, after the season's over, just thinking about what he did, kind of going back, watch some things. He moved around a bit on the defensive line. That's what surprised me. I liked Max Crosby. I remember talking about him in the pre-draft process. I liked him a lot, but I guess maybe what I was wrong about him, I thought he was going to be strictly, just an edge rusher at first, maybe even in a 3-4. The Raiders get him. They put him at 4-3-N. We've seen him slide inside at times. And he's very capable. So that was very impressive. A good second half of the season there. Super impressive. Next group of guys here. Jarrell Casey, another Titans player at 70. Consistency from him as well. He's always dominant inside there. Second half of the season, he really started taking it up a notch on getting quarterback pressures. The Titans were kind of missing that edge pressure, minus Harold Landry. They need it from guys like this, and he was very good there. Tyreek Hill missed some games early, not the most productive year because of that. But him in the playoffs and him in the Super Bowl really, and how dominant he is, really bumps him up, through the end of the season. So he's up at 69. Kyle Van Noy, maybe the more important piece to the Patriots defense, a guy that kind of holds it down in the middle, but very good blitzer as well. Key piece, that's a free agent. He's at 68. One of the better guards in football, Zach Martin of the Cowboys at 67. Another Patriot. We got 2 safeties in a row here. Patriot at 66, Devin McCourty. Highly productive year. Was a playmaker back there. A lot of those guys kind of complement each other. 65, Eddie Jackson of the Bears. In terms of production, not so much what we saw last year. He was way higher on this list last year, but I still think, it's not like he lost any talent. I think he was asked to do a lot more this year, kind of coming up, playing the box, and then playing center field at times. I think that they really missed Amos back there, Clinton Dixon there instead. Jackson had a much bigger role. So, the thing I like about Jackson, he's a playmaker. He does a very good job of reading the quarterback, and I think that's actually rare today, which we used to see a lot more of that. But he's kind of unable to do that when he has to, get in certain, positions or come up in the box. So Same player, obviously, probably even better. Just stats won't show it, but he had another really good year. Levante David of the Bucks, a big-time year for him. The question was switching the scheme, kind of being 3-4. How is he going to be? Because everyone thought, strictly a 4-3 outside linebacker, kind of playing inside. I think him and Devin White, work real well together. Levante David, we always knew, if he was healthy, he's a ball player, and that's kind of what showed this year. Kenny Clark, I think one of the better nose tackles in football of the Packers there, kind of carrying that group down the middle for the Packers defense. A very good defense, but you look at the D-line minus Kenny Clark, you look at the inside linebackers, a lot is on Kenny Clark there to kind of carry the load, and mainly in the run game. The bonus is getting after the quarterback as well. Cortland Sutton had a dominant year. Catching the ball downfield, no matter who the quarterback was, really, he was kind of a nightmare for some corners. Sometimes they can stick with him, but there's really nothing you can do. Fantastic blocker, fantastic after the catch too. I think one of the harder receivers to bring down after the catch this year. Minkah Fitzpatrick, 61, big time playmaker. I think there's maybe a little more hype. Some people probably would have put him higher, just because he was traded for a first rounder of Steelers, and he had a very good productive year, and he was very good. Obviously, I have him at 61. I think a lot of those Steelers defenders kind of complement each other, make each other better here. But Fitzpatrick, a dominant year, good playmaker there in the back end. We're moving on to the next group of players. Darius Leonard at 60, once again, one of the better linebackers in football. Pretty much does it all. Maybe a little better last year, actually, production-wise, but really not far off. In terms of his game, really good year there once again. Marlon Humphrey at 59. I think started the year a little better maybe in the end, but not really far off. Very good year, a lockdown corner, and they kind of helped with bringing Marcus Peters in there. Bobby Wagner, 58, tackling machine. I think a better year last season. I think going into, a new season in general, maybe the best inside linebacker in football. But you see somewhat of a down year, not in terms of really tackles, I guess, but somewhat of a down year, I think, but still 58. And Fred Warner at 57, kind of the example of today's linebacker, high motor, rangy, more athletic, weight doesn't really matter, sideline to sideline, so he had a big year, big part of that 49ers defense. He's at 57. Nick Chubb's at 56, highly productive year for Chubb there. With the Browns, really all they can get going is kind of the run game there. So that was pretty impressive. Him and Hunt, pretty good duo there. Once they got him back, Hunt he's going to be a free agent though, so we'll see what they do there. But yeah, Nick Chubb was definitely impressive. Impressed by, I feel like he's gained speed actually since a good amount since Georgia. So I think that's the most impressive part. Jason Kelce, once again, the best center in football. Limited amount of good centers. Especially if you're voting for like the Pro Bowl, it's like almost like sometimes it's like, what centers do I put in there? It doesn't really feel like there's that many great centers besides, Jason Kelce with another big year for them. And Roger Saffold started off a little slow really early on, but then, as season started going, looked like one of the better run blocks in football, opening up giant holes for Derrick Henry. 53, Shelby Harris had a monster year, a career year on a contract year. The interior defense line of the Broncos really getting after the quarterback. That's what you want. It's rare to have those interior D-line guys. They're mainly there to stop the run first, but in today's NFL, passing, you want the guy to get after the quarterback, and Shelby Harris was a monster doing that. I mean, to me, maybe not stats-wise, but he was one of the more productive pass rushers on their team, and he's not really a pass rusher. Dante Fowler of the Rams, I thought an underrated guy in this year. I mean, he had pretty good stats, but I think it doesn't show enough of what he did. I thought he kind of carried that pass rush. I know Aaron Donald was dominant. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But he's coming from the D-line, the actual pass rushers. Fowler, I thought, was very impressive, getting after the quarterback, causing quarterback hurries to me. Every time I had the Rams on, was watching the Rams, he was kind of causing a ruckus back there, even when he wasn't getting the sack. Alexander Johnson of the Broncos, another Broncos player, had a crazy year this year, was everywhere. Another one of those linebackers, great in coverage, cannot come up and hit. A guy I was high on, but had off-the-field issues that he got cleared up. So it was kind of a shame that this guy never got to play because I thought he was capable of this. And now he gets the chance, and he had a great year. So really impressed by that. Run of the top 50, so a little bit different graphics here. Josh Allen at number 50. Very productive rookie. Still can't believe the Jaguars got him. He fell to them. That was absolutely wild. They had a pretty good D-line rotation going, mainly on the edge there. Josh Allen was part of that and was very productive for them. And actually a better year than Yannick Ngakoue, which is pretty crazy. Mike Evans at 49, another one that kind of started off a little slow, but then really got going and was dominant. One of those receivers that you can guard. You can guard him, but sometimes there's really not much you can do. He's just going to take the ball from you, and there's not a whole bunch of receivers like that in the NFL anymore. It's kind of more the speedy guys, so you kind of love to see it still. Joey Bosa at 48. I expect bigger years to come for Joey Bosa. I want more from him. I think we're going to get that, but still a very good talent, very good player, getting doubled a lot. And he's still able to make his presence felt. Calais Campbell at 47. We talked about Josh Allen. Calais Campbell has a pretty big role. We see him coming from the inside. We see him come from the outside. Stop the run, get after the quarterback. Does it all very productively. I thought he was a little better, first half of the season, but still a dominant player, a very good player. Jamal Adams, kind of a do-it-all safety. Saw him in the box a lot this year, making very instinctive plays. He's number 46 on my list. Next 5 players. Cam Hayward at 45. Another consistent guy. We know what we're going to get from him. He's going to get after the quarterback. He's going to stop the run. We know what we're going to get. He had another one of those years. Big reason, the Steelers had one of the top defenses. Julio Jones at 44. We know what we're going to get from him, too. So we're going to rack up the yards. Just not. We've seen better from Julio Jones. Maybe that has to do with the quarterback play, offensive line play at times, just the team in general. But still a very good year. I want him higher on this list, and I think we can get that. Aaron Jones at 43, touchdown machine, but a playmaker too. It felt like he was the number one player on this offense, leading them to, the title of the division and far into the playoffs, not just running the ball, but catching the ball out of the backfield. It seems like, it's Aaron Rodgers' team. Let's not make that mistake, but it just felt like it was Aaron Jones' team at times this year, which is pretty crazy. Devontae Parker had a huge year. I got him at 42. Big time year. I mean, some of the games he was having, another one of those guys where, he was getting some good separation, which was kind of impressive, but a guy that's going to go up and catch the ball over anybody at some point. It's kind of the Devontae Parker that we expected coming out of Louisville and some, which is crazy because he's been kind of a letdown for so many years. Just a big year, especially with, what felt like, what everyone considers a tanking team. Very impressive. So this is a receiver on the rise. Definitely one to watch out for. Marshall Yanda, part of that Ravens offensive line that was big time this year. I think a tough task for the Ravens offensive line. Some schemes are easier than others. I think it's a tough scheme, and you have to execute at a very high level. I thought Yanda, among others, did that. We're moving on to 40 and down. Luke Kuechly at 40. It's a shame he retired. A dominant year. Really felt like he carried the Panthers defense at times. We've seen good games from guys like Brian Burns. Other guys that they played well at times, but it's just a lot of time it just felt like, and you can see Kuechly too. You can see that he kind of felt the same thing. Like he was sideline to sideline, just carrying guys, picking up the slack after missed tackles, just everywhere for this defense. It's a shame he had to retire. An all-time great for sure. Richard Sherman at 39. Very impressive year, especially because corners don't really seem to last long, and he's been a great one for a long time and still able to do this. I think other talent on the Niners defense kind of makes his job a lot easier. So maybe that's a reason that I don't think he's the best corner in football, but he's definitely up there, especially after this season. But a lockdown corner. Very impressive year. Khalil Mack at 38. Stats-wise, Khalil Mack didn't have the biggest year, but he made a huge impact. He made a huge impact. A guy that I think, starting a new year in general, I think Khalil Mack is the best defense. I think he's the best defensive player in football. To me, it felt like it's hard to say single-handedly because there's so many guys that play and there's so many guys that contribute to a game. So maybe that's a stretch, but at times it felt like he single-handedly won games for the Bears this year, especially early on. He had like a strip sack at like the most important time, or maybe a couple crazy sacks, or there was some games where it felt like if you take Mack away from the team there and even plug in a solid guy, they lose a lot more games than they did. So it's weird to feel like that for a pass rusher. He had really no help either, so maybe that's why the stats weren't quite there. And, I consider a down year. For a guy that I think could be the best defensive player in football, but still, I think people that are kind of looking at the stats, won't think he should be as high as 38, but I'd say they're wrong. 37, Deshaun Watson, a winner, of definitely a fun player to watch. I think first half of the season was better than the second half of the season. Started having those games where it's a little off. He would hold on to the ball a little too long and then turn the ball over. So I guess that kind of bumped him down. But going to the playoffs, a game like that Bills game kind of can bump him up a little bit. Big-time year, young player, quarterback on the rise. Cameron Jordan at 36, highly productive year. Exactly what we expect from him. I think it would have been even more productive if the Saints didn't get they had a couple injuries, crucial injuries on the D-line, so that kind of hurt him. I think units are underrated. I think offensive line unit, defensive line unit, they kind of feed off each other a little bit. You're almost as good as your unit sometimes, unless, it's a guy like Khalil Mack, kind of carrying it. But, so I think the production went down a little bit after that. Maybe that could have bumped him down a little bit, But yeah, very good year. Very, very good year for Cam Jordan, as expected. Next group of players, DeForest Buckner at 35. Yeah, it's so hard to rank the Niners players because there's so many, defensive players, because there's so many great ones there. Like, who was helping who? They're all helping each other. I mean, it's football. DeForest Buckner, I think underrated because I think the interior D-line of the Niners underrated because I think the guys that get the recognition are mainly a guy like Bosa. You got D Ford out there. You got the linebackers who are blitzing here and there, just setting the edge. But I think the interior pressure, which is rare in the NFL, good interior pressure, I think makes the job a lot harder for the quarterback and makes the job a lot easier for edge defenders. It's harder for the edge defenders to make the job easier for the interior defenders. That really isn't much of a thing in my opinion. I think the interior defenders make the edge defenders look better if they're good enough. So Buckner constantly causing a ruckus there in the back end. He was always coming from the interior. Guys like Armstead, sometimes outside, sometimes inside. But Buckner, maybe the stats really want. I mean, pretty good stats. I'm not a big stats guy, but it's just more of his presence, I thought. DeAndre Hopkins at 34. Once again, one of the more dominant receivers in football. Especially in like the crucial times. I'm thinking like the Colts game. Towards the end of the season. It was a primetime game. It just felt like it was a defense game. Nothing was going. And all of a sudden, you're just taking shots to Hopkins. He's making these big-time catches. I'm just thinking games like that. That's just one example. Even in the Bills game, the playoffs, he started, Tre'Davious White had him locked down, and he started kind of beating him up. There was some weeks where it was like, okay, where's Hopkins at? When he's going to show up? Maybe that has to do with Watson being off or the offensive line being off. But you can argue he's the best receiver in football at any given time. And the guys show up at the right time. Those big-time players show up at the right time. That's what he did. Dalvin Cook at 33. Shame that he missed some games down the stretch because he could have been much higher. I mean, early in the season, we were talking about MVP candidate. Then that ended up not being the case. But, I think his impact is what puts him up at 33 because you see the Vikings, towards the very bottom two in the running game last year, which made the passing game so much harder. And this year, when he's fully healthy, and you see he's got more of a burst. You see he's healthier since his rookie year. And just the change in the run game, the change in the pass game, even because I think Cook kind of opened things up for Cousins, and was looked like one of the better running backs in football. Again, it was a shame that he missed some games there, but the traits are there. I'm a big fan of running back traits. I like vision and quickness, hitting that hole. I think Dalvin Cook is elite in those categories. You just got to stay healthy. 32, Justin Simmons, I think you could argue, I think that he's the best safety in football. I got him at, towards the top there. It's just every time I talk about Justin Simmons, I bring up that every time I had the Broncos game on, I watch a lot of football too. Every time I had the Broncos game on, Justin Simmons was the guy standing out, like saving a play, making a big play. You seen him lined up on, one side, coming across, being super rangy, being that playmaker, saving that touchdown, but coming up and hitting as well. Like, he did everything for them. A good young safety, going to get paid this offseason. He's at 32. Another Saints guy here, Demario Davis at 31. Very impressed by his game. A do-it-all linebacker. Maybe not he's pretty flashy, but maybe he's not like a flashy like Fred Warner maybe, like speed-wise. But he did everything. He covered extremely well. It just seemed like every time there was a crucial down on defense, Demario Davis was making that big play. And we know he's going to sniff out plays in the backfield as well. And he was a playmaker, not really a guy you expect to be a playmaker. So very impressed by his game this year. Super impressed. Next group of guys, Drew Brees at 30. So we see back-to-back Saints players. Maybe stats-wise, he wasn't way up the top. He did miss some games. And Teddy Bridgewater filled in, so that could be why, but still a dominant player, record-breaking season, kind of a career record though. And he's a reason the Saints are that good every year, and that's why his play, his taking care of the ball, I know the playoff game is a little disappointing, but taking care of the ball consistently, it just gets him in the top 30 here. Marcus Peters, I was so impressed by Marcus Peters. Early in the year with the Rams, he was actually struggling a little bit, getting beat a bit, gets traded to the Ravens, it's a guy you like because it's a guy you don't want to piss off. You piss him off, he plays that much better. Wish he can do it all the time, but he did that all the time with the Ravens this year. Rare that defensive backs could read the quarterback at the same time reading the receiver. We're seeing less and less of that, maybe because these offenses are so good, so quick, so fast, and stuff that they're not used to. But Marcus Peters stood out in that category a lot to me this year. Actually being able to kind of multitask as a playmaking corner. So I'm excited that he was able to do that and lock up a contract with the Ravens. Chris Godwin at 28, I thought was one of the better receivers in football. It's a shame he missed a couple games at the end. He was a do-it-all receiver. That's why I loved his game this year. You line him up anywhere, you have him run any route, catch the ball, run after the catch. He was good at Penn State. He's on another level now. Every category, he's on another level. He's bigger, faster, stronger, smarter, can do more. Like, it's insane how far this guy's come here. So I was insanely impressed by him. Ryan Ramczyk held things down for the Saints. Another Saints player here. Crucial to protecting Drew Brees there, not really giving up anything all year. So another impressive year for him. And yeah, kind of going back, I kind of questioned that draft pick when they took him because I didn't really feel like they needed him yet. And he ended up playing right away, being dominant right away these couple years. And it just shows that, you kind of get that offensive lineman. These smart teams know when it's the right time to get the offensive lineman for the future, and he happened to be the near future, and he's been very dominant so far. Tre'Davious White at 26, lockdown corner, not really giving up anything. Last year he was pretty damn good, but, looking back at last year, I remember watching last year, there was times where he kind of got lucky, caught breaks, even though he was very good. He would get beat at times, way more than people think just by his maybe numbers or what he let up. This year was a totally different story. He was way, stickier this year. Developed, being able to read, both the quarterback, the receiver. Very dominant. Not afraid to come up in the run game to make a stop. And it was a guy that coming out of the draft, coming out of LSU was, thought to be just maybe a slot corner, which slot corner is a tough task. It's really hard to play, but he made that was kind of the doubts in some people. Just can't be an outside corner, and now he's an all-pro outside corner this early in his career. So very impressive. Next group of players, 25, Quentin Nelson. Talked about a little bit ago how, especially offensive line. I think you're as good as your unit. I think if you take away a good piece, what we think is a really good piece from that unit, plug him somewhere else that's not a good unit, he may look a lot worse. But I think, Quentin Nelson kind of made that unit. Other players, other offensive linemen in that group are good, but we see them a couple years ago they were worse, and last year they went from worst to best. And again, being able to stay consistent, and we see offensive lines, I should say, kind of go back and forth. One year they're good, one year they're bad, or 1 week they're good, 1 week they're bad. But not the Colts. And I think ever since they had Quentin Nelson, I think that kind of made that unit whole and made everybody else around him better. Just a dominant offensive lineman. Chandler Jones at 24, highly productive, like always. For the Cardinals, they're kind of had to pick up the slack some other players. So yeah, top 25 player for sure. Grady Jarrett, I think another underrated player. I think the Falcons defense was extremely disappointed this year, but Grady Jarrett was always looking very good. Like always, this is a guy that carried his defense. Absolutely carried his defense. There's other players on that defense that I consider good, and they had good games at times, but this year was ridiculous. This year, Grady Jarrett carried that defense. He's going to stop the run first, but he's also always getting after the quarterback. Sometimes you watch him, throw the interior offensive line guys, off him. It just looks like he has like never-ending amounts of strength. It's ridiculous. I thought, that might have been his best season. It was a ridiculous season, and he doesn't have the help either. He has to do so much. Arik Armstead, another somewhat of an interior defensive lineman for the Niners. We've seen him line up on the edge at times, sometimes where D Ford's kind of standing back behind him, sometimes D Ford not in the game. He's opposite of Nick Bosa, sometimes sliding inside. So he gets the pressure from anywhere. When he got the interior pressure, it was ridiculous. It was key. It was a big reason the edge rushers were really good. He had a career year on a contract year. That happens a lot for a lot of players. It's wild, but an insane year from him. A big reason why I don't think he gets enough credit. Tyrann Mathieu, number 21. It's interesting because if I were to do like safety rankings, I might put a guy like Justin Simmons ahead of him as a safety. We see this where we're ranking just players in general. Tyrann Mathieu isn't really just a safety. He's a corner. He's a slot corner. You call him a linebacker at times you want. We've seen him blitz. He's everything. So in a rankings like this, yeah, he's going to be much higher because he does everything for this team. The team voted him as the MVP. It felt like he was kind of one of those missing pieces to the puzzle there, and a good leader there for them. So a dominant year, dominant postseason. You see a guy like Juan Thornhill get hurt, and he's kind of going to control the middle. Even though Sorensen, I think, stepped up at times, he really has to control the middle there. 20-16, Anthony Harris at number 20. I think the best safety in football this year. Not the best defensive back I have listed, but if we're talking defensive backs, I think this was your number one playmaker. Getting his hands in the ball, and it's not, there wasn't a lot of times where, you see other players that get those turnovers. A lot of them are kind of just overthrown, tipped to them. Anthony Harris did an excellent job just jumping so many routes and reading the quarterback's eyes, and that was my favorite part. And then we talk about Harrison Smith. Harrison Smith played in the box a lot this year. Anthony Harris kind of was center field by himself a lot this year. So a lot of responsibility, big-time year for him. Ronnie Stanley at 19 talked about different schemes and offensive lines. I think the Ravens have a tough scheme, a lot of a gap scheme there. At Lamar Jackson, some plays you want to run them outside, some plays you want to run them inside. You want to use your running backs inside. It's a tough scheme, gap scheme. You almost got to use your strength, but you can't give up leverage at the same time. And Ronnie Stanley was one of the better offensive linemen in football in a tough scheme and a tough task there. Nick Bosa at 18, just impact is what I think of Bosa. Even when he wasn't getting his sacks or pressure, he was an impact. The presence was there, and he was a game changer for a pass rusher. Getting the strip sacks at the right time. Even sometimes it was setting the tone like real early and kind of getting that game changing play early, or sometimes it was a crucial moment in the end. Huge impact in just his rookie year. Even the Super Bowl, he was great. Aaron Donald at 17. I guess a down year for Aaron Donald, but still number 17. To me, he's right there with Khalil Mack, who's the best defensive player in football on a new year. Still a very dominant year. I think he does need more help. It was pretty much him and Fowler were the only guys getting to have a chance of getting pressure, and they're coming from two totally different types of positions. So a dominant year there. Danielle Hunter of the Vikings was insanely impressive this year. I think, another one of those game changers. It seemed like if they take Danielle Hunter away from the team so many times, some of these times in these games, like the Vikings lose the game. Like he got that crucial strip sack, see him facing double teams, still beating them. It's just a dominant year for him. And we even seen him get a defensive MVP vote. But, freakish talent. A guy coming from LSU had, I think, 2.5 sacks in his career there. And just the way they've been able to develop him into what he is now is pretty ridiculous. So, dominant year for him. Next group of guys, Chris Jones at 15. We've seen him miss some games, and that's crazy that he's still at 15 because with those games, he could have been much higher. We actually see quite a few Chiefs on this list here, on this page. But Chris Jones is absolutely dominant. You see the difference between the Chiefs when they have him and when they don't. Down the stretch, you're looking at the Titans game and you look at the Super Bowl, you take Chris Jones away. I don't know maybe you can still win the Titans game even though he's absolutely dominant stopping Derrick Henry. You don't win the Super Bowl if you don't have Chris Jones. You definitely don't. So he definitely bumped, his stock up a little bit through the playoffs there, the couple playoff games in the Super Bowl, playing those, but was absolutely dominant in the regular season, just absolutely dominant, getting after the quarterback and stopping the run. He does it all. He's an elite interior defensive lineman. And just a year ago, he was a 3-4 end. They switched to a 4-3. That moves him to 4-3 D tackle. It doesn't matter. We've seen him play anywhere on the D line too. If he's playing, 3 technique, 4, whatever it is, nose tackle, whatever it is, he's dominant. Eric Kendricks at number 14, blown away by his play this year, kind of just known as the stop the run guy. He's going to stop the run, and he did that this year. But he was insane in pass coverage. Just every single, it just felt like it was ridiculous. Every single time there was a huge third down, or not even a huge one, anytime there was a third down or a fourth down that the offense was going for it, it just felt like Eric Kendricks made the play. Like almost, it's absurd. Almost every single time, whether it was coming up and sometimes it was a run, sometimes it was a pass, and it just doesn't matter. It felt like he made the play every single time. It was ridiculous. Just all over the field, more rangy than he ever was, and a very impressive year. It's kind of a surprising year too, because we knew he was good, but how he was just all of a sudden able to add so much to his game. Mitchell Schwartz at 13, a guy that bumped up his stock throughout the playoffs, another Chiefs player here. No one's getting by him. We see the right tackle position more important than ever. It's pretty much just left tackle. Just get that left tackle. No, the right tackle position just insanely impressive, important because people are moving those top tier pass rushers to that side, or maybe they prefer that side, or maybe it's because there's a lack of good right tackles in football. But he's dominant. He was dominant in the playoffs, in the Super Bowl. Even crucial run plays. That kind of what goes unnoticed. Crucial run plays. Just I guess where he's underrated in, just making more of an impact in the run blocking than maybe the guards or the center was. So big time piece for them. I mean, seeing some of those games that just going game after game without letting up big pressure, and that's talking about the playoff games too. Travis Kelce at 12, another Chiefs player, absolutely dominant. I think without Travis Kelce, you have a problem. I know you have the best quarterback in football, you have the receivers, but you really got nothing. Over the middle and like the crucial plays. It seems like every third down, and we'll say like 7, 5, whatever it may be, it's just going to Kelce over the middle, and teams know it's coming. You still can't stop it. He showed up in the crucial moments at times. There was some random games where it's like he's a little quiet early on. Where is he? But then he would kind of just show up in those big time moments. It's just another dominant year from a tight end. Shaq Barrett at 11, just missing out in the top 10. Insane year from him. They signed him to a 1 year. I mean, what is it, a $5 million deal? Let's just get another pass rusher that fits in here, and we'll see. That's kind of one of those deals, and he was absolutely dominant. Got after the quarterback, but he did a lot more than that, making plays, dropping back, actually seen him make plays as well. Highly productive year, a guy that was a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. Very impressive. Now he's going to get paid, another contract year. Player, we're getting to the top 10, the big top 10. They all get their own graphic. Number 10 is Stephon Gilmore, who actually won the Defensive Player of the Year. I can't be mad that he won the Defensive Player of the Year, even though he wasn't my pick. Cornerback is harder to play now more than ever with these offenses. And there's really, I think he's really the only, or maybe Jalen Ramsey if we got to see him play a whole year. But really the only corner that has like the total package, everything to his game. So I mean, just so impressive, so deserving of, even though he wouldn't have been my vote, deserving of the Defensive Player of the Year. Absolutely dominant, the best corner in football, best player in that Patriots defense. Number 9 is T.J. Watt, another candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, to me, T.J. Watt made other players, a lot better on that defense. And don't get me wrong; those players were good. But I think Bud Dupree was the guy that just missed the list for me. A very good year, contract year, I like to mention. But I think having a guy like T.J. Watt just makes him that much better. And I think there's proof there. There's proof, and what he's able to do, not just getting after the quarterback, but seeing him drop back, make the big time pass deflections, seeing him get his hands on the ball quite a few times. It's just so impressive. And it's a guy, going back to the draft, I liked him. He was a good player. In no way did I think he was going to be this good. So I guess that's a guy I was wrong on. I didn't think he was going to be, that good. So, I mean, and he's still early on in his career. A dominant year. Just an impressive year. Definitely a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. George Kittle at number 8. And I think George Kittle kind of set how teams go about finding their tight end now. I really think like one player, and you could argue at any given time that Kelce could be better, but this year what George Kittle was able to do, but how does he set like what teams are looking for a tight end? He was a blocking tight end. He's a dominant blocker, and just to be able to get better athletically and in the passing game, year after year, and looking at this year, crucial moments in games, we've seen him not only catch the ball, but know where to go after the catch and break tackles. If he had to get that extra yard, he wasn't going down. But, just the most impressive part is still the blocking, though. It's still the blocking, and you see the Niners on paper don't have the best offensive line, even though they played pretty damn well this year. But a lot of times in those run plays, there was just some wide open lanes. And you go back, and there was some good blocking by the offensive lineman, but I think the biggest reason is George Kittle. I think you go put him at right tackle, left tackle, and he actually could do it, And the playmaking ability, the game-changing ability is kind of what you add on top of that. So I definitely thought he was a top 10 player this year. 7 was Christian McCaffrey, obviously a do-it-all running back, absolutely dominant. Maybe a little better earlier in the year, but kind of when the Panthers were better. But then he really had to kind of carry the load. It just felt like, for the most part this year, is kind of carrying the load there. But yeah, another dominant year for him. And kind of the concern was, it's funny because the kind of concern of some people were, will he be able to take like the full load? That many, like a whole bunch of carries. And not only is he taking that, but he's getting all these receptions too, and he's really carrying the team. So it kind of really proved that wrong. easily a top 10 player this year. Number 6, Michael Thomas, a record-breaking year. And even with that, how good that year was, it's tough putting him at 6. It shows how good the top-tier talent is. The best receiver in football this year. And what I liked, what he added to his game was, I guess, the footwork and creating separation. The footwork was just something on a different level from what I've seen from him, because we know he's physical. We know he's a contested catcher. He's got great hands. He can get separation, just not a whole bunch of separation, in his early years, and now more this year. I think it starts with the footwork. Just a dominant player all around, in a big-time year for him. Number 5, Za'Darius Smith, who was my Defensive Player of the Year pick. Shocked that he didn't get a single vote. The main reason he was my Defensive Player of the Year is because, he does so much. He's not just an edge rusher. He does so much. You've seen him rush from anywhere. We've seen him with a hand in the dirt, seen him off the ball. He does so much for this team. I thought he was kind of the glue to that defense. I thought he was kind of the glue. It just made him that much better. And you see, he had high production as well. He had high production, and you see what he creates for other teammates. I think he makes other teammates better. I think him helps a guy like Preston Smith a lot more, makes his job easier. I think, when I watch the film, when I watch the game, when I'm thinking even pre-snap, is he is already in the quarterback or the coordinator, whoever's just calling the play through the quarterback's ear. He is in, and the offense line, he's in their head. And there's times where you just can't defend it. And I absolutely thought he was the defensive player of the year, a dominant year. Just mind blown by what he made this list for me last year, nowhere near number 5, and that's what a good defense like the Ravens, and what he's able to take. I like the signing too. Some people were worried about the money. I was not worried. I love the signing, but I did not expect this much, and it's just showing me things that I don't think is gonna go away. I think this is gonna continue. I don't know if I expect him to be my Defensive Player of the Year pick every single year. That's a tough task, but I don't see anything that makes him go away. I thought he was a top 5 player. I may be the only person that has that, and I'm very confused why. Was surprised that he didn't get a vote for the defense MVP. I really am, and I would have put all my votes in there. Obviously everyone only has one, but surprising. We're on to the top 4. We're gonna have 3 quarterbacks in here. Russell Wilson's at number 4. Dominant year. At one point we were talking about the MVP, and he very well. Even with Mahomes, what he does, he's very well could be the best quarterback in football at any given time. Somebody said that, I'm not going to be like, you're an idiot, it's Mahomes. That's, you can't really say that, because he's that good. And we see him, unlike, every time there's an elite quarterback, it almost feels like they have a pretty damn good offensive line. They have a lot of time, but never Russell Wilson. Maybe last year it's for some reason picked up a bit. This year it was, better than maybe some years in the past before last year, but then it got beat up. He just doesn't have time, so he has to scramble, do all these things, and make these crazy throws. And some guys getting hurt. The lack of running backs down the stretch. The lack of, I guess, targets. Will Dissly being hurt. Just what he's able to do is ridiculous. Just a dominant player, and he comes in at 4 this year. I think in general, if you're starting a new year, he's probably better than 4, honestly. And I really don't know what else he can do. I think they got to do a better job of kind of getting that offensive line together and getting some more weapons there, and then he could actually be the talent he can be. So there's actually more in there, I think. I really think there is. And that's kind of on the organization there, which they've done a fantastic job, so don't get me wrong. But I think they can get him a little more. That's my point. We're on to the top 3. I got Derrick Henry at number 3, running back at number 3. That dominant this year. The Titans had other good players. Tannehill was playing good. A.J. Brown's playing good. They got some good defensive players. But at a lot of the times, it just felt like Derrick Henry, a running back, was carrying this team through all the way to the AFC Championship game. It's just hand him the ball. Everyone knows he's getting the ball. We still cannot stop him. Just a combination of freakish size and freakish athleticism for his size, once he gets going. And there's really, this has to be maybe the most feared guy in football. I really think so. To other players, it has to be. And just I don't know if we've seen running backs kind of pick up teams, make an impact, and get them places. But I don't know if we've seen a running back carry a team. Even, don't get me wrong, though, there's other good players that helped, but it just carry a team this far since maybe a guy like Adrian Peterson, in today's NFL. It was absolutely crazy. It's at times it gives you kind of goosebumps, gives you the chills, like what he was able to do. And Tannehill had a good year, but in the playoffs, he didn't really throw the ball well. He didn't really throw the ball a lot because Derrick Henry was just pounding the ball. Everybody in the world knew it was coming, and he still consistent, still dominant. So for those reasons, yeah, I thought he was a top 3 player. You take Derrick Henry away from the Titans, they don't make the playoffs, not even close. And that's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, a running back. And the next question is, how much do you pay a running back? That's the next question. And that's another debate, but that's going to be very interesting this offseason. And we're on to the top 2. Number 2, I thought the best player of the regular season, I thought deserved the MVP award because the MVP award does go to the best player of the regular season. Which you could argue if it should be or not, but Lamar Jackson was dominant. All the doubters, all the haters, an elite player this year, a guy that you can game plan for but really can't stop. I guess the Titans kind of did it. Even though I thought Lamar threw the ball well in that game, some people may disagree. I thought his team kind of let him down, and that could have really changed the game and made the running part a lot easier. But yeah, a dominant year. Ravens were the best team in football for the regular season for a reason, because of Lamar Jackson. I think the coaching staff gets too much credit almost. I think it's Lamar's team, it's Lamar's system. He's a dominant football player that it's just very hard to stop. One of the most feared, well deserving of the MVP. And he's number 2 for me. Number 1 if we're talking regular season, but of course, to me, playoff, Super Bowl matter. That's why they play the game. That's the goal. And it's all football. It all matters. It's all part of the same season. The best player in football, back-to-back years, is Patrick Mahomes. The best quarterback in football, the most dominant player in football. Quarterback-wise, maybe the most feared just because he can make any throw. It's just ridiculous. And he's the Super Bowl MVP for a reason. He's a Super Bowl champion at age 24 for a reason. And we even see in the Super Bowl, he's playing maybe the worst we've seen him play, maybe ever at one point. And he still wins the game. He's still able to pick himself up. He's still able to dominate when the team knows he's throwing. That's where the Niners defense got people too. Make them throw so we know they're throwing. We don't have to worry about stopping the run. And it's just easy. Defense is a guessing game. It's easy to play when we know it's coming, and you still can't stop it. You let the guy come back. On top of that, when guys are kind of down, not playing their best, it just seems like they continue to play that way. Every quarterback ever, it feels like that. There's been times where it's the opposite, but Patrick Mahomes in the bright moments, in the right moments, was just able to overcome that and be the most dominant player in football. And we even see, corners. Like I talked about when I was talking about corners on this list, what I'm looking for is the rare ability to be able to read the quarterback and the receiver at the same time. Don't just lock in on one, because that'll be a mistake. And there's a few that can do it, and it's super impressive. It's one of the hardest positions in football, but those guys cannot do it against Patrick Mahomes. They just cannot do it. He's almost going to beat himself. Some of those interceptions were they're just purely on himself. The defense didn't do anything special. It's just kind of just the mistakes that come up here and there. It's just, with the velocity of the ball and with his eyes, he makes it impossible for cornerbacks to be able to kind of read him and be able to adjust. And we've seen that every step of the way. And that's kind of one of the things that stands out. And the young quarterbacks too, the things with young quarterbacks is, and why they all of a sudden develop and get better. I mean, yeah, you get older, maybe you get some more arm strength, maybe you get more athletic, you kind of fill into your body a little bit, you get some coaching. But I think the main thing, the number one thing is why young quarterbacks, when they get better, why do they get better, is because they start to figure out how to read defenses and start to get used to what looks mean. What's going to happen here? How do I adjust the play? And this guy is already elite in that category right when he came in, but an even bigger step up this year, just changing the play for the better. And doesn't really need the coach to hold his hand on top of it. I mean, I'm one of those people that say every quarterback's a system quarterback. I don't like, there's ones that are more system quarterbacks than others. But to me, Patrick Mahomes is one of the guys that is the system. He's going to make the system. You do what he does. He's the guy, and they have a great staff to help him out. But just absolutely dominant. And the other thing, we see Chiefs got a good offensive line. It was beat up at times this year. He faced some pressure. But under pressure, he's so great too. Eyes in the back of his head, able to, be so strong and stand up and evade, sacks, break the sacks, take care of the ball, make the big plays after, make the runs. And I think that was kind of the thing that kind of played in part of the actually winning the MVP and me and being okay with him winning the MVP over a guy like Damian Williams in the Super Bowl was there was so many crucial plays that we forgot about at the end of the Super Bowl that was just like he was about to get sacked, and that could have been a game or another step closer to making it harder for the Chiefs or for the Niners, and he was able to avoid that sack and either run or make that big throw. And it's not just the Super Bowl. He's done that so many times. He's the best player in football, was the best player in football for the whole year for me. People will argue with it. They'll argue with the whole list. But that's what I got. That's what I got. We do this every single year. And, I mean, there's a bunch of players. We can talk about this in the comments. I'm not going to sit here and rattle off players that are good enough to be. There's other players that are good enough to be top 100 players that I hated myself for leaving off this list, but I just couldn't put because I had to choose 100 players. So there's more than 100 good, great players in football. People will hate me for this list. It kind of comes with the job, I guess. But that's all right. That's all right. So feel free to ask questions on Twitter or in the comments. I'll try to answer them, try to talk about who just missed the cut. Tough to make this list, but I like what I come up with, of course, obviously here. But full NFL coverage off season, we got you. I'm excited for free agency, the combine, the NFL draft. That's where this channel started. That's where it started with the NFL draft. So I'm so excited for this off season. It doesn't just it doesn't just end after the last game of the year ends. We got you covered then, but we keep it going here. So subscribe to both channels. Follow us on Twitter. You'll find links down in the description in the comments. Really appreciate you guys for the support and for watching this video. That's going to do it. Goodbye.